Ladies, sometimes the deepest pain is the one you hide with your strongest smile. You show up, you hold it together, while quietly bleeding in places no one sees. You don't tell him how much it hurt. You don't tell him you still cry, because he doesn't deserve to witness the healing he never stayed to help with. You protect your heart now, not out of fear, but out of power. And if you're moving in silence, I see you. You're not cold, you're just finally choosing you. There are moments when silence becomes your only language. When the pain is so deep, it presses against your chest like a secret you're not allowed to share. You look fine on the outside, you smile just enough to pass through the day, but your soul feels like it's bleeding behind closed doors. You want to scream, to explain, to say, look what I'm carrying, but you don't, because your dignity matters more than his understanding. So you hold it in, you carry your own heart in trembling hands and pretend like it doesn't ache. You show up for work, for friends, for family, with a strength they all admire, never realizing that you've stitched yourself back together just to survive. You don't fall apart in front of anyone, not because you don't want to, but because you refuse to be pitied by the one who broke you. So you become your own comfort, your own rescue. You sit in your car some days just to breathe, just to cry without explaining, just to let it out where no one can witness how raw it still is. And that's where the healing begins, not in the noise of confrontation or the desperation to be heard, but in the silence you choose for yourself. You learn to protect your softness. You realize that your hurt is yours, not for someone else to justify or fix. You stop looking for apologies that will never come and start whispering to yourself, I'll be okay. Even when you don't fully believe it yet, you rock you. Yourself back and forth like a child nursing their own wounds, holding your own heart like a mother would. It's sacred, it's powerful, and no one sees it. But that's the point. It's not for them. People around you have no idea. They think you're strong, and you are, but not in the way they imagine. Not because you don't feel deeply, but because you feel it all and still choose to move forward. Every laugh you share with a friend, every task you complete at work, every time you walk past a memory without flinching, it's a victory. You don't get medals for it, no one claps, but deep down you know the war you've been fighting, the one where you keep losing pieces of yourself and still get up to face the day. You pretend to be okay in rooms where you're screaming inside. But you know this. Silence is strength. Silence is survival, and your silence has kept you whole. The nights are the hardest, when everything is quiet and there's no one to distract you from the ache. You replay things you never should have tolerated, words you wish you never believed, and you cry silently, into your pillow, into your hands, into the darkness that wraps around you like a familiar coat. You don't post it, you don't text anyone, you just sit with it, because there's power in not letting the world see you break. There's power in protecting your pain like a treasure you're not ready to share. Because the truth is, not everyone deserves to know how much you hurt, especially not the one who caused it. You've learned not to beg for closure, not to ask for answers that only reopen wounds. You've stopped waiting for someone to say, I see what I did to you. Because whether or not they see it, you still have to live with the aftermath. And you've chosen to live. You've chosen to rebuild, not loudly, not with grand declarations, but quietly, in the ways that matter, like waking up and making your bed, like going out when all you want to do is hide, like smiling at the mirror even when your eyes are swollen from crying the night before. These are the things that no one claps for. But these are the real victories, the ones you carry alone. There's something sacred about hiding your pain from the one who caused it. It's not about being fake or hiding your truth. It's about reclaiming your power. You don't owe anyone your breaking point. You don't need anyone to witness your destruction to validate that it happened. Sometimes the most radical form of self-respect is privacy, is guarding the parts of you that are still trying to breathe, because your healing doesn't need an audience. It just needs you. The you who still shows up even when your heart feels like shattered glass. The you who still chooses peace over chaos. That's the you that will survive this. You used to think healing meant telling your story, but now you know healing is choosing who gets to hear it. Not everyone deserves access to your grief. Not everyone should be allowed into the sacred space where you are learning to be whole again. And that's okay. You're not cold, you're not closed off. You're just protecting the only thing that matters now, your peace. You've spent enough nights giving your energy to pain that didn't serve you. Now you've learned to sit in stillness and ask yourself, what do I need? And the answer has never been validation. The answer has always been freedom. Quiet, unshaken freedom. When you walk past the places that once triggered your tears, You don't flinch anymore, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you've grown strong enough to carry the pain without dropping yourself. And there is something breathtaking about a woman who learns how to do that. A woman who holds her story close, not because she's ashamed, but because it's hers now, fully hers. She decides what to share and what to keep, what to let go and what to grieve in silence. Her strength isn't loud, it's steady, like a heartbeat that never stops, even when it's bruised. You don't show him the hurt because he's not the safe place you thought he was. You show yourself compassion, you build your own safety, and you stand tall without needing anyone to catch you. You've learned that healing doesn't require the person who hurt you. It requires the version of you who refuses to stay broken. So you move differently. You speak less, you protect more. You no longer explain why you're quiet, why you pulled back, why you seem distant, because the ones who truly care won't need an explanation. And the ones who don't deserve one. You owe nothing to the past except your own peace. You loved with a heart that didn't know how to hold back. You gave in quiet ways, in loud ways, in ways that even you didn't fully understand. You saw beauty in him that he never saw in himself, and you hoped that if you loved hard enough, gently enough, completely enough, he would finally stay. But sometimes love isn't enough, not because your love was weak, but because it was never meant to carry the weight of someone who didn't know what to do with it. You kept giving pieces of yourself, praying they'd be treasured, but they were just taken without care. You whispered your fears and shared your soul, and it felt like handing over a fragile gift with trembling hands. You loved like it was your purpose, but he made you feel like it was your flaw. And so you learned the hardest lesson: never let someone see how much they mean to you before they've proven how much you mean to them. There were moments when you wanted to say it out loud, how much you cared, how deeply you felt, how fully you'd choose him again, but something in your spirit told you not to, because love, when it's not valued, becomes a weakness in the wrong hands. So you held back, you smiled, you laughed, you played it cool, even when your heart was burning for something real, because you knew if you made him your world too soon, he'd treat you like an option. You deserved to be someone's peace, not their possession. You wanted to be held, not handled. You needed to be understood, not just entertained, but you kept that longing hidden because you knew showing it too early would only push him away. Some nights you rehearsed what you wanted to say, how badly you wanted to be loved the way you loved. You'd lay there thinking, maybe if I just say it this way, maybe if I just show him this part of me, he'll finally see. But you never said it, because deep down you feared he'd use it against you, that your love would become ammunition in the wrong war, that your softness would be mistaken for desperation. So you stayed silent. You held the words back like a dam holding back a flood, not because you didn't feel them, but because you didn't feel safe. You needed someone who would cherish your vulnerability, not weaponize it. And until then, you decided to love yourself more than you loved being chosen. You started to notice the shift, that the more you gave, the less he tried. The more you reached, the further he drifted. And it broke your heart in ways you couldn't explain, because it was never about needing him. It was about wanting to be seen, to be valued, to be loved, for all the things you were too afraid to show the world. But he didn't see that. He saw a woman who would wait, a woman who would bend, a woman who would keep loving even when she wasn't being loved back. So you learned to hold that love closer. You learned that giving your all to someone who hasn't earned it is like pouring water into a broken vase. It never fills, it only empties you. There was nothing wrong with the way you loved. The problem was giving that kind of love to someone who didn't know what to do with it. You are not too much. Why? You are not too emotional. You are not too intense. You are real, and real love is rare. So now, you choose differently. You still love, but with boundaries. You still care, but from a distance. You still hope, but with wisdom. Because now you understand that the love you give is precious, and not everyone deserves access to it. You don't show your full heart to someone who hasn't earned your trust. You don't expose your soul to someone who hasn't proven they can hold it gently. You protect yourself, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. Sometimes the hardest part is pretending you don't care as much as you do. Laughing when you want to cry, walking away when you want to stay, acting like you're unaffected when every part of you is aching. But you do it because you've learned that showing your heart too soon can invite the wrong kind of love, the kind that takes without giving, the kind that feeds off your attention but never feeds your soul. So you pull back, not because you're cold, but because you're wise. You've been burned enough times to know that fire can look like warmth until it scorches your spirit. And now you choose peace, even if it means staying silent about how much you once cared. You stopped waiting for someone to reciprocate what you gave so freely. You stopped begging to be noticed. You stopped hoping that maybe if you stayed just a little longer, loved just a little harder, things would change. Because you finally understood, it's not your job to prove your worth to someone who's blind to it. Love is not about convincing, it's about connecting. And when there's no connection, no effort, no depth, your love becomes a burden, not a blessing. So you release it. You gather the pieces of yourself you gave away and start rebuilding, quietly, gently, powerfully. You hold space for yourself the way you once held space for someone else. And now, when you love again, it will be different. You won't offer your soul to someone who can't even handle your silence. You won't explain your worth to someone who can't even see your value. You will still love with depth, with grace, with fire, but you will love wisely. You will watch first. You will observe how they treat you before they know how deeply you can feel. You will give slowly, not because your heart is cold, but because it's sacred. And you've learned that sacred things aren't thrown around casually. They are kept, cherished, protected. The right person won't need to be told how much you care. They'll feel it in your presence. They'll earn it with their consistency. There is strength in holding your love back until it's safe. Not everyone deserves the most tender parts of you. Some people only want to taste your light without ever giving you theirs. So now you keep your flame close. You don't dim it, you just protect it. You let your heart beat without begging someone to match its rhythm. You don't chase, you don't perform, you don't plead. You sit in your fullness, knowing that the love you give is a gift. And when it's finally time to give it again, you'll know it's safe. Because this time it won't be taken for granted. This time it will be met with the same kind of fire that once lived only in your chest. There's a kind of silence that's not about fear. It's about knowing that some people don't deserve to know what's coming next. Not because you're playing games, but because you're done playing yourself. You learned the hard way that when they know your next move, they prepare their excuses, they tighten their grip, they manipulate what they think you won't let go of. So now you don't speak, you observe. You let your actions speak for your growth. You let your peace be misunderstood, because peace is not for them to define. You don't argue, you don't explain, you just evolve quietly. Because the ones who once thought they had power over you lose control the moment you stop giving them information. There was a time you thought Tai meant full transparency. You believed that if you just communicated better, if you just told them how you felt, how you hurt, how you hoped, they would change. But all it did was hand them a blueprint to hurt you better. Every time you shared your doubts, they used it to twist your mind. Every time you revealed your fears, they pushed those buttons harder. So you stopped offering your strategy to someone who only saw it as an opportunity to keep you small. You started keeping things close to your chest, not because you're hiding in fear, but because you're finally protecting your peace. The less they know, the freer you become. You owe no one your plans when they've only used your vulnerability as ammunition. You used to explain yourself so much, why you're pulling back, why you're quiet, why you're not texting first, why you need space, but not anymore. Now you just move, not because you don't feel, but because you felt too much and been misunderstood too often. You've learned that silence is safer than explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You've grown tired of justifying your worth, your boundaries, your emotions. So instead of explaining, you distance. Instead of repeating yourself, you disappear into your own healing. That's not revenge, that's growth, that's maturity. That's what it looks like when a woman chooses herself in a world that taught her to choose everyone else first. It hurts though, let's not lie about that. It hurts to love deeply and realize you have to be unreadable to protect your heart. It hurts to know that the more someone knew you, the more they took advantage of your softness. But what hurts more is giving someone every map to your soul and watching them use it to break you. That pain taught you how to become still, how to become calm, how to become a mystery they no longer get access to. It's not coldness, it's survival. It's the quiet strength of a woman who has decided that not everyone gets to know what her next step is. That kind of strength is quiet, but it shakes the ground beneath those who once thought they had you figured out. They don't know anymore if you miss them. They don't know anymore if you're done or just distant. They don't know anymore what you're thinking, and that bothers them, not because they care, but because they've lost control. When they could read you, they could manage you, but now that you're unreadable, they're uncomfortable. That's what happens when a woman stops responding the way they're used to. She becomes untouchable. You're not ignoring them. You're reclaiming the energy you wasted trying to be understood. And now they sit in confusion while you sit in clarity, because nothing is louder than the silence of a woman who has finally had enough. You don't post your pain anymore. You don't announce your healing. You don't share your every emotion with the person who couldn't handle the weight of your heart. Instead, you go inward. You journal. You pray. You cry when no one is watching. You grow in secret. And it's in that secret place where you become someone new, someone softer but stronger, someone wiser but still kind, someone who knows her next move but doesn't broadcast it. Because you've realized that power isn't in proving anything. Power is in no longer needing to. And your silence now speaks volumes louder than all your past explanations ever did. You used to be predictable. They knew your patterns. They knew when you'd come back, when you'd reach out, when you'd forgive. But now you're unpredictable. And that terrifies them. They don't know if you're healing or healed, if you're watching or forgetting, if you still care, or if you finally closed that door for good. And you don't tell them, you just let them wonder, because the version of you who used to seek closure has left the room. Now you let the unanswered questions linger in their mind, the same way they left you questioning your worth for so long. That silence is not pettiness, it's power, and you wear it like armor. You still love deeply, you always will. But now your love is private. Now your intentions are guarded. Now you give only when someone proves they can be trusted with the weight of your heart. Not everyone gets access to your soul just because they ask. They have to earn it. They have to show up. They have to give the same energy they expect. And until then, you move in silence. You build in silence. You protect yourself in silence. Because you've learned that love without boundaries is not love, it's self-destruction. And you're no longer offering yourself to people who only know how to consume, not cherish. You don't threaten to leave anymore. You just go. You don't say, "I'm done" 10 times. You just disappear on the 11th. You don't beg to be seen. You simply stop showing up. That shift is quiet, it's internal, it's rooted in heartbreak, but it blossoms into self-respect. The old you needed closure. The new you doesn't need a conversation to confirm what you already feel in your spirit. And that's the difference. You used to scream your truth. Now you simply embody it. You used to fight for their understanding. Now you fight for your peace. That's what healing looks like when you grow tired of being predictable to someone who only loved you when it was convenient. You no longer need to be loud to be powerful. You no longer need to be seen to feel whole. You no longer need to be read to feel real. You just move, gracefully, silently, intentionally. The woman you're becoming doesn't need to explain her every move. She just trusts her steps. And every step you take now is toward your own freedom, your own healing, your own light. They don't know where you're going, and they don't need to. Because the peace you're building in silence is louder than any attention they once gave you. And the woman who moves in silence is the woman no one can touch. Healing doesn't come with a spotlight. It happens in the quiet, behind closed doors, where no one claps for your progress and no one sees the nights you almost broke. You wake up with swollen eyes from the tears you didn't let fall in front of anyone. You carry the weight of memories that keep visiting uninvited, and you still smile when someone asks how you've been. There's a kind of pain that teaches you how to live with a heavy heart while pretending it's light. You don't talk about how hard it is to get out of bed some days. You just do it. Not because you're fine, but because you don't want anyone to see the mess he left behind. So you wear your strength like a mask and your silence like a shield, because your healing is your own and no one deserves to watch it if they were part of the breaking. You stopped trying to explain how hard it's been, because when someone doesn't care, your pain just sounds like noise. So you hold it in, you cry alone, you break in bathrooms and rebuild in mirrors, you keep the ache tucked under your ribs and show up anyway. You go to work, you answer calls, you laugh at things that aren't funny, you nod when people talk about moving on like it's easy, but they don't know you still hear echoes of old words. They don't know certain songs feel like glass against your skin. They don't know that every time you fake a smile, you're just trying to keep yourself from falling apart in front of people who wouldn't understand. So you heal in silence, not because you want to, but because it's safer that way. The worst part isn't even the pain, it's the pretending. Pretending you're over it. Pretending you don't miss what hurt you. Pretending you're not exhausted from carrying feelings you can't release. You scroll past memories you wish you could erase. You hear their name and your stomach still flips in that sick, familiar way. But you never say it. You never admit it, because what's the point of showing someone how badly they hurt you if they never cared enough to stop? So you keep that ache locked away. You don't write long messages you'll never send. You don't reach out. You just sit with the longing and pretend it doesn't exist. That's how healing looks when you're doing it alone. There's a version of you that still wants to be loved by the person who broke you. And that's the version you fight every single day. You remind yourself why you walked away, why you had to, why going back would only reopen wounds you've barely managed to close. But that doesn't stop the dreams, the sudden memories, the urge to pick up your phone and say, I still feel it. But you don't. You let the moment pass. You let the silence stretch longer. Because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing peace, even when chaos still feels like home. You hold yourself steady in the storm that lives inside you. And you remind yourself that healing doesn't need to be loud to be real. You used to believe healing meant you'd never miss them again, that it meant you'd forget their laugh, their touch, their words. But now you know healing means remembering without reopening. It means feeling the sting without picking the scab. It means crying in your car, then fixing your lipstick and walking back in like nothing happened. It's slow, it's painful, it's invisible, and that's why no one claps for it. Because no one sees the strength it takes to not respond, to not chase, to not explain, to not beg for closure. You give that closure to yourself now, in soft whispers, in hard decisions, in choosing yourself over and over, even when part of you still wants to choose them. People. You say time heals everything, but they don't talk about what that time feels like. It's the late nights when your chest feels too heavy to breathe. It's the flashbacks that hijack your peace. It's the moments you catch yourself smiling at an old memory only to be hit with the reality of how it ended. Healing isn't gentle, it's violent. It rips you open and asks you to look at every part of yourself that still hurts, still hopes, still clings. And you do it, not because you're strong, but because you don't want to live in pieces anymore. You want to be whole again, even if you have to rebuild from the ground up, alone. You've stopped trying to explain the pain to people who weren't there when you broke. Because they wouldn't get it. They'd say, just let it go, as if you haven't tried. They'd say, you're better off, as if knowing that makes the nights easier. So you stay quiet, you nod, you agree, but deep down, you know this wound didn't just bruise your heart, it reshaped it. It made you softer in some ways, harder in others. It made you look at love differently, trust differently, yourself differently. And now you hold your heart with both hands, careful, cautious, gentle, because you know what it costs to love without protection. Every time you choose not to text, not to explain, not to show how much you still care, that's healing. Every time you delete the photo instead of staring at it, that's healing. Every time you remind yourself of the truth instead of romanticizing the lie, that's healing. No one sees it, but you do. And that's enough. You don't need anyone's validation to honor your journey. You don't need anyone's permission to feel what you feel. Healing doesn't ask for applause, it asks for honesty. And the most honest thing you can do is sit in the wreckage of what hurt you and decide to build something better from it, not for them, for you. One day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. Not because you forgot, but because it stopped hurting the same way. The memory will still live somewhere in you, but it won't control you. You won't flinch. You won't ache. You'll feel nothing but peace. And that peace will be yours alone. You won't need to show it to anyone. You won't need to prove it to the world. Because the woman you became in the silence of your healing doesn't need attention. She just needs rest. And finally, she'll have it. Because she learned how to walk through fire without screaming. And no one needs to know how loud that silence really was.